Thank you. I'd like to clear up a couple of possible misconceptions here. First, that, Mr. Belger, you were not the acting administrator on 9/11. You were the acting deputy administrator. That Jane Garvey, the administrator, was there at headquarters and was in charge. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Second misconception, I am sure, was unintentional by my colleague, Commissioner Gorelick, that if only the White House had cut you in on the intelligence of the threats of hijackings, that you would have acted differently. In fact, the White House did ensure that that FAA headquarters did get that intelligence. In fact, all of the intelligence that was referred to in the August 6th memorandum. And our staff has verified this, that Mr. Bono, the head of your security and intelligence, had received all of that and had sent it forward, and that Ms. Garvey's assistant filtered it out. In fact, she didn't even have clearance for it. And that at no time was a request made for direct briefings on these matters in that period leading up to 9/11. I think, in fact, if there's one real unescapable failure, and I'm not talking about you personally here, it is the failure of the performance of the headquarters of FAA that is very identifiable. In our hearings a year ago, we had testimony that the administrator never heard of any of these possibilities, never heard that there were reports that hijackings in the United States, potentially using the aircraft as missiles, had been made and were currently being discussed. Never heard that 4-inch knives, for instance, could be a threat and kept them permissible. Never heard that the airlines were not conforming to directives to keep cockpit doors locked and other security issues. And on the day itself, the testimony of witnesses, and you heard our report this morning, where FAA had what is, to me, a surprisingly hierarchical and centralized set of protocols where everything had to be cleared upstairs, ultimately to headquarters. When it got to headquarters, it seemed to fall into a black hole. And during that day, there was virtually no until you made the decision after all of the crashes to lock down everybody, which was very decisive and very effectively carried out. Up to that point, it was a black hole. There was no notification of multiple hijackings, which witnesses said was because they'd reported and asked for it up to headquarters. Nothing came out. There was no notification of the military on 93. There was no direct communication with NORAD from headquarters, even though headquarters had centralized the decision-making. The communications with NMCC, which you have said was where the focus of headquarters was never established during the critical period. There was never any attention paid to the secure communications because you had a STU 2 or the administrator had a STU 2, and NMC and everybody else had STU 3s. It had never been upgraded. Nobody took the common sense provision, since they couldn't get through, to pick up the telephone or go down into the payphone and call the NMCC while all this was going on. So I'm not blaming this on you personally. You were only the acting deputy. But I'd like your view now, since you're no longer there. Can you tell us that these fairly gross shortcomings in the management of the headquarters of FAA have been corrected?
Yes, they have. Yeah, I'd like to expand. First of all, on that day, just a couple of thoughts in terms of your remarks. As I said before, the National Military Command Center was entered into the hijack net at 9:20 in the morning. That net's there for everybody to listen real time to hear what's going on. So, I mean, that's just a fact. Secondly, I don't know about the efforts that the NMCC made to make secure communication calls with the FAA. The FAA has the latest communication capability. I don't know who they called, but our intelligence folks who are right there next to the operations center, they have the latest equipment. So I'm frustrated by that because I just don't know who they called or what that specific situation was. Now, I can tell you that subsequent to 9/11, your specific questions, a great deal of effort was put into improving the communication and the decision-making capability between the FAA and the military, specifically directly to NORAD. I believe it is no longer the FAA's protocol for everything to come to the headquarters and go from the headquarters to NMCC. I think there's a lot more flexibility and accountability and expectation that things will go directly to NORAD now, as Mr. Sliney said. So those things have been corrected. There are dedicated phone lines from the FAA field facilities to NORAD. There's this 24-hour open communication net so that all the federal agencies, they got to listen, they got to be there, but it's there for everybody to hear the information at the same time.
Thank you. I have one last question, not directly related to that day, but to the pattern of toothlessness that came out of our staff investigations that contributed over many years to the laxity in air travel security for which FAA was responsible. Do you believe that FAA has enough enforcement clout to enforce the safety of flight and against the kinds of threats we have today?
Well, I mean, the accurate answer to your question today is that security responsibility was transferred to TSA. So FAA does not have the aviation security responsibility today that it did on September 11. Including
aboard the aircraft, internal security, and so forth?
Yes, sir. The airline security requirements, the airport security requirements, the inspection capability to ensure that those requirements are being met was transferred to the TSA. The FAA retained some of the responsibility to approve training programs and other things that affect the safety of flight, but the security responsibilities were transferred.
Are you comfortable with that interface now, that nothing is falling between the cracks? Do you think it should stay in TSA?
Well, TSA certainly has the capability to meet their mandates. I'll just say what I said in my opening statement. I'm a little bit concerned about the capability in today's very complex world between TSA, DOD, FAA, and the FBI, who's still a player. And I just those protocols need to be exercised very, very frequently.
Thank you. That's a very helpful recommendation, and appreciate your forthcoming testimony.
Thank you.